if you guys were here last year, you had a chance to see Lindsay talk about her trauma and her incident that occurred. And then we decided part two was needed. So we included her loving and supportive husband, Jason, who I've never had a chance to meet in person yet, but I look forward to doing that when we get the opportunity. And I'm very grateful for you guys both clearing your schedules to do this again today. This is going to be now from a family perspective of trauma and communication and resiliency. So, Lindsay and Jason, thanks very much. I won't eat up any more of your time, but I look forward to hearing your presentation.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me back and including Jason this year. We're going to be talking about trauma and communication and family. So as we know, the first responder world, there's just a lot that goes on with us on the job every day. And sometimes certain things that are really important, like communicating with our loved ones, can be forgotten. And because we hold a lot of stuff in when it comes to the job and protecting our families and not wanting to really let them in on what's going on. So I was in law enforcement for 17 years before my medical retirement in 2020. My career ended due to a critical incident or officer involved shooting that happened in October of 2018. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But since then, it's just been, trying to filter through trauma and figure out who I am and be the best wife and the best mother that I can be after this traumatic thing has happened. And then just us, coming together as a family and a community and supporting each other.
Yeah. So just a little background on us. We'll kind of tell you a story of how we met. I used to work, I still work retail, but I used to work for Target. I did assets protection or loss prevention, and she used to come pick up my shoplifters. So it started off kind of awkward. I'll gladly admit that I don't have much game when it comes to women. So she used to come pick up my shoplifters. I'd sit in the corner of the office typing and staring at her awkwardly, and she came around a lot. I was good at my job, and I don't know how much that had to do with you, or but
I think he was just making up shoplifts so I can come up there and get them. That's what I think.
Maybe. But she teases me because I never really asked her out. My coworkers would tease me because they knew I had a crush on her and I thought she was attractive, and never really asked her out. So one day, I worked up the nerve and I was like, hey, you want to go grab some coffee or something like that? And she looked at me, and her response was, I don't drink coffee. Now, mind you, this was a hard thing for me to do because every time she came in, we'd talk and, have conversations. And her favorite topic was talking about like these guys that would hit on her at work and how creepy they were and how weird it was and how, they were kind of losers and all this stuff.
Hold on, time out. Because in my defense, though, anybody, it's hard to date when you're a first responder as a female. Guys, I feel like it's like, oh my goodness, it's a man in uniform, and they're like all about it, right? But women, like, we get the most ridiculous comments thrown at us. You can be in the middle of arresting a guy and he'll ask you out on a date, or a guy will say something slick like, ooh, a woman that loves handcuffs, and it can be very annoying. And then also men can sometimes be intimidated by a woman in uniform, right? And I was actually dating somebody when I was starting police academy, and he looked at me and said one day, I don't like your job. And I was like, what? And he's like, I don't like your job. Now, I'm still in police academy. I haven't even gotten out onto the street yet. And I looked at him and I said, well, I don't like you enough to quit my job. So dating was like a very difficult thing. And then when me and Jason met, it was nice to be around someone who wasn't intimidated. So I thought, I guess, right, by what I did.
A little bit there, but I hide it well.
Well, and so that worked for us. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was nice because he got to know me while I was already a police officer, and he got to know me through my friends too, who worked at the police department. So he knew a lot of the officers that I worked with, even like 2 years before we even started dating.
Mm-hmm. And they actually, to this day, I haven't worked for Target in over 10 years, and they still refer to me as the Target guy.
Yeah.
That's so.
Exactly. So, but it was just interesting because it's like, even in our relationship though, I'm pretty boisterous. I'm a tomboy. I'm pretty independent. But then once we got into a relationship, just trying to figure out our balance too, because I want to control everything. And then I laugh and I refer to us as the princess and the caveman, and I don't say a caveman in a negative way. I'm just talking about in the primal way that cavemen behave, right? They're very much in the present, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I like to live in the present. I don't worry about the past. You can't do anything to change that, right? I don't worry about the future too much, other than, do I have food? Do I have a house? Are my kids and wife taken care of? Can I protect them? Those are my main concerns in life. And whatever I have to do to make that happen is what I focus on. So,
well, that played into how we communicated too, because with the job can be very exciting, right? So if any of you all have experienced this, like, you want to tell people everything, and then people want to ask you stuff, but then it gets to that point where you'll say something, and it's generally like a close family member. Like, I had a conversation with my mom one time. I was like a 24-year-old rookie. I was excited about this foot chase that I'd gotten into, and it just got crazy. And she was really quiet, and I looked over, and like tears are just streaming down her face. And I'm like, what happened? And she just looks at me and she says, I don't like your job. I don't like your job. And she says, I've been trying to hold this in for so long, but when you tell me these stories, like, it scares me. So then it kind of puts like this damper on how you choose to tell people about the job. And we definitely have run into that a couple of times.
Yeah, there's, fast forward, obviously we're married at this point. She gives me a call one day, and she's all excited and she's amped up, and she's talking about this fight that she got in at work. And she's like, the guy, got on top of me, and I was staring at the sky, and I flipped him over, and I did this and I did that. And she was really excited. And then she's like, hey, somebody's here, I gotta go. And she hangs up. And I was like, oh my God, right? So that caveman mentality, like, somebody hurt my family, I gotta go, take care of this. So, I'm keys in hand, going out the door, trying to figure out where she is. And she calls me back. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm in the car. She's like, where are you going? I'm like, wherever you are. Because in my mind, I had to go down there and protect her, even though, she's tactically trained, has a gun, she's able to handle herself just fine. But that's my role as a husband, as a man, in my mind anyway. And so we had to kind of talk things through a little bit, and we developed,
what'd you call it?
The husband appropriate conversations.
Husband appropriate conversations. So it's like, I can tell him things about work. It's not like I ever kept work from him from that point on.
Right.
I just had to flip a switch on how I told him about work, and not just with him, but also like with my mom. I have two brothers, because they get very protective. Like, he never did a ride along with me. Never, ever. And I told him, if you want to do a ride along, you have to pick someone else, and it cannot be on my side of the city. It has to be far, far away, because my younger brother rode with me one time, and I kept having to pull him back by his shirt collar anytime somebody got a little froggy with me. But to me, like, that's what I'm getting paid for people to catch attitudes with me. My attitude a lot of times on the street was, I'm getting paid to deal with your stupidity, and you're being stupid for free, or, it's going to cost you time in jail or a ticket, and so for us, we deal with it so much. We're used to it, right? But our significant others and our friends that are really, really close to us, they want to be protective sometimes. So we definitely had to find that balance. Even we were dating one time, and I just thought about this. I was on the phone with him, and we were just probably newly dating. And I'm on the phone with him at a friend's birthday party, and I complained about a guy that was there that was hitting on me, that I wasn't, that I didn't really care for anyway. And then I'm thinking, this one's going to bed. Well, like 40 minutes later, one of my cop friends says, hey, the Target guy is here. I didn't know he was coming. And I'm like, I didn't either. And I walked right up to him and I said, you just peed on my leg. And he's like, no, I didn't. I just got here. I said, no, you just marked your territory. You were going to bed, sir. Why are you here? So, I mean, like, just throughout our relationship, I was learning more of what the caveman brain entailed, and just that protective nature overall, right?
Absolutely.
So, we, as we move along in our relationship, we eventually get married. We have 2 kids now. But one thing that really another thing that added another layer to our communication as a family is I was diagnosed with postpartum depression in November of 2017. So our second child was born in January of 2017. You know, it's cool, it's fine. You know, second time around mom, it's a little easier. You know, the first time, you know, you're at home and it's great. And you're like, oh, I never want to go back to work. And then your second one you have, and when it's coming time to go back to work, you're like, I'm out, peace. Take the baby. I need to be around some adults, right? So things were fine, right, for a while. So I thought, and I had my daughter in January. I went back to work in April, and something was off. I didn't feel like myself, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was, because, you know, when we don't talk to people, when we keep things inside, we can convince ourselves of a lot of things, right? Unless we're communicating with our friends and our family and the people who see us every single day. So I convinced myself I was experiencing baby blues, right? Which is like the period after a woman has a baby and things are just out of whack, you know, your body, you know, if you've had a cesarean, like with my first, I had a cesarean and it takes a minute. It's like, oh my goodness, like I felt like I looked like Frankenstein down, you know, in my pelvic area. And then, you know, you're tired, you know, you're up all night, you're worrying about this little person. And I was nursing. And so I'm up like every 2 hours. But baby blues only last for a few weeks. I convinced myself of this for months. So I went back to work in April, like I said, and it wasn't until November of that year that I got diagnosed. So that's 7 months I had been back out on patrol with this, which can be dangerous, you know, and I was very lucky though, because, you know, of Jason's support and the conversation that he ended up having with me.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I noticed a change. And at first I thought the same thing. You know, she just had a baby. Yeah, she's going through a lot. She's up all the time. But after a couple months, I noticed.
You notice he said I was up all the time because, you know, they can sleep through crying babies. But it's
Yeah.
fine. I'll get over it. Go continue. I love you. Go ahead.
So I noticed these changes. I noticed her, you know, what, you know, I guess we call depression. She liked to sleep a lot. She'd, you know, didn't do the things that she liked to do at one time, you know, the detachment piece. She was a little shorter as far as, you know, her temper. She'd snap a little easier at me or kids or whatever the case. And this just wasn't her, you know, it wasn't something that I was used to. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I had a conversation with her mother, actually. Her mom came to me and was like, hey, what's going on with Lindsay? Because she's not acting right. And it was a noticeable change. So me, you know, as the husband, I got to figure out how I'm going to go to my tactically trained wife with a firearm and tell her she's crazy. And so that was, you know, a little intimidating, but, you know, you got to have that honesty. And sometimes honesty is not easy. Sometimes it's a little ugly, but you got to do it if you're going to have a good relationship and that good communication piece. So I sat her down. I'm like, hey, this isn't good. Something's wrong. And we need to get some help. And I made sure that I preface, you know, I really emphasize the we, because this is not a her problem. This is not something that she needs to fix. This is a family problem. This is a us problem. This is something that, you know, as a family, we need to work on together and make sure things get better.
Well, and I like the we part of that statement, him saying that to me, that was probably the most impactful part of we need to go to the doctor. And this is a family problem because, you know, I do peer support and I speak to too many women who go to those appointments by themselves. And I also speak to significant others who are afraid to have that conversation because they've already tried to approach them with it. And, you know, we're emotional, we don't know what's going on, and we get very defensive and it just blows up, and then they become afraid to even approach them with that again, which can be dangerous. You know, a male officer or female officer coming to work with a significant other at home who's dealing with postpartum, that's not good for the first responder who's at work, because your A game needs to be on when you're at work, right? 100%. But if most of your brain is occupied with what's going on at home, that's not okay. So he was very instrumental in that and very brave, as I tell people too, to have that conversation with me. And I wasn't upset, Ash, honestly. I was relieved that like he saw what I was feeling. And yesterday he joked, we did a presentation yesterday afternoon and he joked, men actually do pay attention to women, so I appreciate that. And, I tell people all the time, like, I know y'all know biology, but when a sperm fertilizes an egg and a life is created from that, and the adults that decided to nurture and care for this child, that is a everybody problem. That is not her problem. That is because we know what undiagnosed, untreated postpartum looks like. People get hurt, and the extreme level, people can lose lives. Postpartum affects how you treat yourself, how you treat that new baby, how you treat your significant other, how you treat the children in the house, like whatever else is going on. So it is a very serious problem. If your significant other, lost a leg or it had cancer, everybody's going to help take care of you, right? They're not just going to say, oh, you got to take yourself to chemo. Oh, I know you're limping, but you got to figure out a way to get yourself down to the store and to your appointments. No, everybody takes care of it, right? And so the other thing is, we don't reach out enough too. Like, babies are fun and they're cute, but we forget about the person who had this baby, right? I like to reach out to the parents themselves. And what do you need? I'll come by and take your trash out, fold laundry, just give you time, a little bit of peace, because as exciting as having a child is, it can also be a very lonely and isolating time. That's what I realized. And nobody tells you about that, because all we see is the happy part, right? We don't see, like, after my husband went back to work after I had our son, I had an emergency C-section, which I didn't plan for and didn't research. But he went back to work, and I remember spending that first day at home just crying because I didn't feel attached to my baby. And there was nobody there and I was in pain, so just little things that we can do to help out can go a long way, right? So my doctor was great. She included my husband in my, in my treatment plan, if you will. We did a lot of holistic things in the beginning because I wanted to stay away from medication. I kept it at bay, because in my mind, I'm not crazy. I don't need medication. I can fix this myself. But if it were that easy, it would have been fixed, right? Eventually, I did end up getting on antidepressants, which was the best thing for me. Jason saw a change. Our extended family saw a change. And I wish that we talked about being on antidepressants more often, the way we talk about taking heart medication or diabetes medication or high blood pressure medication, because I probably would have taken it sooner, but we don't talk about it. Right? We pretend it doesn't happen. Or the more I talk to women and men and families in general about postpartum, the more you hear postpartum stories. So it may be more of a natural part of the process than we really realize, because nobody talks about it, right? Medication was great. I felt like myself. I had energy. I was motivated. I was more engaged. I was better at work. I was more engaged at work and wanting to, like, thinking about getting promoted down the line and stuff like that. And just all this self-care stuff came into play, and Jason and I started communicating better.
Yes, absolutely.
This
was, you look back at your life and you find these pivotal moments and these things that happen to you that kind of change the way you do things. This was definitely a wake-up call for me, at least, something that led me to communicate a little differently, just as far as the honesty, and that, I guess, like I said, sometimes it's ugly, but you got to have that. And I'm paying more attention to each other and just kind of noticing those small changes and addressing them, and, hey, everything okay? And being sincere when you ask that, and wanting to hear the answer and make adjustments where needed to just be better for each other.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like asking the question, like you said, and then if you get, we all expect everybody to say that they're okay, but when you don't get that okay answer, okay, also knowing what the next move is, and we tend to isolate ourselves with our nuclear family, but that's what we have parents for. That's what we have friends for, and our tight-knit community. Somebody doesn't have to be blood related to be family, so I know a lot of times we feel like, oh, I don't need anybody. I'm an adult. I feel like that's when you need people the most. I know they say it takes a village to raise a child, but I think that means a person, period. It takes a village to raise a person. We're not finished being raised just because we're an adult and we got a mortgage and a family of our own. We still need that sense of community. So, you know, all the self-help stuff really, really helped me, and it helped us, and it helped our family. And what we learned is it really helped when it came to my shooting. So, and we don't have a whole bunch of time, so I'm going to tell a very condensed version of it. But basically, October 29th, 2018, my zone partner and I were assigned to excuse me, let me run that back. She had taken an order of protection and domestic violence report, excuse me. And we found out there was an order of protection that was already out on patrol. Another officer had attempted to serve this order of protection twice with no success, but we knew that the suspect was at the house. So my partner calls me and assigns me to her call and says, hey, listen, I just took this report. We know he's home. Will you go to the house with me? Because she can let us in. She has standings or rights to the house still. So she can let us in. And the plan was we were going to contact him, serve him, and hook him for the domestic violence, or arrest him for the domestic violence. That was the plan, right? Didn't work out like that. So she lets us into the house. She doesn't go all the way into the house, which I thought was weird at the time because it's domestic violence or a relationship order of protection. And when somebody is having to leave, generally the man, the woman is standing front and center watching him pack his stuff and go, but that didn't happen, right? And me and my partner go in the house, and I remember the house being dark, which is not that unusual for Arizona because we use blackout curtains, right? But I remember feeling like the house was eerily dark, and my partner said the same thing later on, is that she felt like it was weirdly dark. Then my attention was broken from how dark the house was, as my partner takes her left hand and takes out her flashlight, and she's kind of looking around. Well, I hear her voice talking to someone that I can't see. So I look down a hallway, or I step in a little bit to see down a hallway that she can see down better than I can. And there's a male coming up the hallway, tank top, shorts, hands in his pockets, walking at a normal pace, never made any facial expressions. And she said who we were and why we were there. And I'd say when he got about 15 feet from us, she says something to the effect of, can you take your hands out of your pockets? Well, when he came out, he came right out with a 6-shot revolver and immediately started firing on us. So he was firing from right to left. When the first shot went off, my partner was standing to my left. When the first shot went off, I actually thought she got shot in the face because she's a little shorter than me. And I didn't have time to look because two things happened. A second shot went off. I got shot in my right forearm here, and he was rushing me. So all at the same time, I get shot in my right forearm. He's rushing me. My firearms training kicks in. Muscle memory, I go to draw and step to the side, and that, as I was getting shot. And now I have to make a decision because he's coming straight at me. Well, the girlfriend runs out of the door we had come in through. I run out of the door too, because I'm not trained to be a bullet trap. Like, I have to move. Your feet aren't glued to the ground. And I have no shame in saying that I ran. A lot of people are like, oh, you ran? I'm like, he's coming. You have to make a decision, and you have to make a good decision, because if I'm dead, I can't help anybody, right? So he runs out of the door after me. And what ended up happening, because of the configuration of the kitchen, we ended up all running past my partner. So she ended up being pushed further back into this kitchen area that we were in. So as we're running outside, the suspect fires again. I got shot in my upper left arm here. I didn't feel that one at the time, probably because of adrenaline, and I was a little heavier then. So I don't like to call it fat. I call it mama insulation. So my mama insulation protected me well, because I never even felt that one. But he shot back at the house, I'm assuming trying to shoot at my partner. That went into the door jamb of the house. My partner was able to return fire. To me, my partner's a rock star, and I really believe that she saved my life that day. she shot one time. That's the best part of the story for me. She shot one time. It wasn't like dump, 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 reload, dump, dump. She shot once and she hit him. And that bullet went in his side, came out of his chest. He was 2 steps behind me. I got shot a 3rd time in the lower part of my vest. And that same bullet went into his right arm, right? And when I got hit in the lower part of my vest, it's right over my kidneys. I didn't realize that would buckle your knees. And I fell dead weight in the gravel on the side of the driveway. And he ran off to the left, luckily. He goes down a couple of houses, hops in somebody's backyard, and he had one more bullet left in his gun, and he used that one to take his own life. And obviously I didn't know that until later. And so I also didn't realize that my partner was still in the house at this time. In my mind, I'm thinking she ran after him. But before I got to the part of, well, where's my partner and I need to be with her, when I was laying on the ground, if you've ever been involved in a high stress situation, spatially things can speed up or slow down. In the middle of everything, I felt like I was running through water. I felt like everything was slow motion. Even when my partner said gun, it was like the gun, like as he was pulling it up, it was tick, 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 tick. And I could see it. And even when I was going to draw, it felt very slow. But when I was laying on the ground, I thought I was on the ground for a lot longer than I was. My partner says I hit the ground and I popped back up, took off running, but I had all these thoughts that went through my head. The first one was, oh shit, am I paralyzed? Because I couldn't feel my legs for a minute or a second, I guess. The next one was, did I poop or pee on myself? Because who knows what happens when you're in pain. And I don't know why I thought of that, especially because I couldn't feel anything. And I'm like, I could have just peed on myself. This could be interesting when my squad mates come. Then the next thought was, well, if I look around, like, where is he? Because I don't want to look over my shoulder because I got my face down in the dirt and I get shot in the face. I'm not saying that for vanity reasons. I just don't want to get shot in the face. And no.
Nobody wants that.
And then, muscle memory and just all these visions of my academy instructors came flooding back and they were like right in my face, right? Like yelling at me, like, you stay in the fight, you will go home today, your family deserves to have you. They were like, in my face, I could see them, I could feel them, right? And I got very motivational and very tough love with myself at that point because Jason's face popped in my head. Our son was 4, our daughter was 22 months, and I got very motivation. I said, bitch, get up. Because this is not where you die. If he's going to kill you, he's going to have to work for it. And so I got up, I pushed off my broken arm that I didn't know was broken. I get down, behind some cover and I'm trying to grab my radio because my radio's swinging everywhere. I see blood on my hand and like my fingers are like this. And I look at my arm and there was a hole here and there was a hole here. And I was like, oh, that's white meat. Like, my arm is like this. I'm like, oh, my arm is broken. And so I had auditory exclusion and I could barely hear what was going on. Everything was womp, 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 womp. Like to this day, I don't remember hearing my partner calling for me on the radio to find out where the suspect was. And when I made the determination to go find my partner or attempt to go find my partner, firearms training kicked in again. I put my hurt arm to my chest. I reached across with my support hand because I was like, I can't let her be out here by herself, not knowing she's still in the house. But when I reached across, there was no gun in my holster. So you want to talk about a pucker factor, right? So whatever I thought I had pooped and peed out, sucked all the way back up and then some, because I can't take 2 shot arms into what I know to be a gunfight. And I did this little dance back and forth because I thought I dropped it in the house. And then finally hearing sirens broke me out of that little OODA loop that I was in. And again, tunnel vision, high stress. If I looked down a couple inches, it was right there in the dirt. And still to this day, I don't remember seeing it. Even when I watched the body cam footage, a lot of what I tell people is from what I saw on my body cam, my partners, and one other person who was on the call, and then what I read in the reports, because everything happened so quickly and everything is just so, you know, it just seems so out of whack, right? And we get extracted from the scene eventually, and you know, we get thrown in the back of ambulances, and you know, they're cutting and ripping stuff off, and you know, I had to call my husband from the ambulance because I didn't want my family to find out what happened on the news, and it was on the news. And I made the decision to call Jason from the ambulance myself.
Right, and getting that phone call, right? That's the phone call that nobody ever wants to get. I was working overnights at the time, so I was dead asleep in the middle of the afternoon. She called the first time. I didn't answer the first time because I was asleep. And then you called your brother.
I called my brother, whose first question to me after I say, hey, I'm okay, but, because it's weird, we talk about when that day happens, but you don't think about what you're going to say to your loved one. And when the phone is ringing, I felt like it was ringing for years. And I said, I'm okay, but I just got shot 3 times. I'm being transported to Osborne Hospital. I need you to get there. His first question to me was, who shot you? And I'm like, does it matter, sir? I just need you to get to the hospital.
But yeah, so I get that call. And again, you know, I have caveman brain. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do right now? I set up like my objectives. My son was at school, and so I knew I had to get him from school. Our daughter was with a friend of ours that day while we were at work, and so I go to school, I get my son, I take him over to our friend's house, I drop them off, let them know what's going on. That whole time I got a little sense about me because I got kids in the car. I'm not driving crazy, but once the kids are out of the car, it's on, right? It's Mario Andretti going as fast as I can to get to the next town over to get to this hospital. So I'm moving there. I pull up to the hospital, and I never expected to see anything like this. I didn't know what to expect, honestly, right? I've never experienced anything like this. I prayed that I never would. But I pull up to the hospital, and there is an ocean of blue standing out front. There's so many officers, police officers, fire department, police officers from other cities and jurisdictions. Everybody turned out to help any way they could. But I pull up, her chief at the time was standing at the front. She grabs the keys from me. She's like, we'll take care of the car. Don't worry about it. Come with me. She walked me inside. And as I'm walking into the hospital, I had no idea what I was walking into. She had called me and she gave me the same thing. You know, I'm okay, but I've been shot 3 times. So I had no idea where she was shot. I didn't know how badly she was injured. I didn't know anything. So obviously the worst possible scenarios are going through my head. I'm like, what am I going to walk into? I'm going to see my wife with bullet holes in her. That's, you know, although as, you know, a husband of a police officer, that's something that I know can happen, but I never expected it to. And here it is in my face. So I'm terrified as I'm walking into the hospital, and I come around the corner and to this triage area, and everybody kind of moving out of the way, splitting this ocean of blue that I call it. And I look at her, and she's sitting up on her bed, and she's kind of propped up there, and she's laughing and giggling and joking around with some of the other officers that are there. Once I see that, it was amazing how all that panic and that fear and that just worry just fell away. You know, all those worst case scenarios weren't there anymore. It was like, I have my wife, she's right here, she's alive, everything's going to be okay. And that's why we joke around and call it the caveman brain. It's like, okay, that stuff didn't happen, so don't worry about it. Let's focus on this, which is much better situation. But yeah, get in there. She's, I mean, obviously on pain medication.
That's why I was joking and laughing, because they gave me the good stuff. So by that time I could focus, because I couldn't focus on anything before then. And then, you know, it just, part of the first responder brain kicks in too, is you feel like you have to be on for everybody too. Everybody's there to see you. It's like, you know, you're in labor and everybody's standing around waiting on you to have this baby. Like, you feel like you have to perform to a certain extent. So I can definitely admit that that was part of it, but you know, the pain meds helped too. But we had a lot of great support there too. You know, I had great support from the family, great support from the department, like peer support team and stuff like that. And I know that's not always the case, because I travel around the country speaking and doing peer support and stuff like that. And that's not always the case with other departments, you know, and it's just really sad how we can treat each other after, such horrible things happen to us, right? And we'll be ready to go through the door with somebody 1 minute, and then they get into some shit at work, and then we turn our backs on each other. And it's like, how does that work? And so we were very fortunate in that way. And our peer support team, I worked for Tempe PD. We had made some changes to our peer support team. And I can say that, like, me and my partner and our families benefited from those changes. There's nothing wrong with admitting that we have faults sometimes, and we have holes in our care plans and our resources, as long as it gets improved upon. That's what matters, right? And so we had a lot of good support, but we have kids that we have to deal with too. Our 22-month-old, she really didn't care much about anything other than the fact that when he came, so I got shot on a Monday, he came and brought the kids to the hospital to see me on Tuesday. And she walks in with her thumb in her mouth, and all she was concerned about was the fact that I hadn't been home in 24 hours and I was breastfeeding her still. So the first thing she said to me was, boo. That's all she wanted, boo. And so she doesn't understand. I got, a wound vac in my arm, and, I've had all these, I have like medications in me and anesthesia from the day before. She doesn't understand any of that. That's not her concern, because she's 2. She needs her basic needs met, right? Which was boob at the time for her. So our 4-year-old walks in, and he's an old soul, and he picks up on a lot of things. And he looks at the machine, he looks at the wound vac, and he's like, are you gonna die? And I was like, no. And he's like, but they're stealing your blood. And I'm trying to explain to a 4-year-old what a wound vac is. And then in his mind, he's like, this is a vampire hospital. They're stealing blood from people. So all of that is going on. The hospital is a blur. I remember that part because it was just funny and it's my kids. But we get home, and now we have to try to find some sense of normalcy at this point, and just be husband and wife and be parents. And we have people coming over to visit for the first few weeks. Oh, yeah. We had meal trains, we had a lot of really good friends that just came over, and I feel like they babysat me and babysat, I had a friend, she had just had a baby like 4 months before. She came over with her infant to help me and my daughter. Our son was at preschool that day, and she just sat there and folded clothes. Like little things like that go a long way. But then we have to get back to us, right? So one of the most impactful things that I remember at the time was how receptive kids can be, and how much we try to act like they don't understand things and they don't pick up on things. We made sure nobody said anything about mommy getting shot. Mommy just broke her arm in a fight with a bad guy, right? That's kind of true. Well, this was a through and through up here, so they just put bandages on, and he asked if he can help me change my bandages one day. So I was like, fine. He's seen boo-boos before. It wasn't anything horrific. And he takes off the bandages and he cleans it up for me, and he kind of looks at the front of my arm, and he looks at the back of my arm, and he says, are you sure the bad guy didn't just shoot you? And just real matter of fact. And my jaw was like, what? Like, if we had basements in Arizona, that's where my jaw would have been. And I was like, first thing that came to mind, because I think he's stupid, right? He's 4. He doesn't know anything. I fell on a stick. And he looks at me, a stick? And I'm thinking, like, I didn't know what to say. And my son says, like an arrow? And I was like, sure, an arrow. So then he leaves the room because he's done. I've answered his question, right? His kids are just that simple. Well, that bothered me. And I talked to my therapist about it. And she says, you need to sit him down and talk to him and tell him the truth, right? So we did that. We came up with a plan, and we sat him down before our daughter woke up one day, and we told him just plain and simple, like, mommy got shot. And he says, well, why did you lie to me? No, I'm sorry. The first reaction before that was, well, duh, I told you you got shot. And I said, okay, you're right. I should have told the truth. He's like, why did you lie? And I said, well, I didn't lie. So I'm trying to explain to a 4-year-old what omit means, right? It just went rogue. But we answered his questions, and he leaves. But if you know anything about kids that age, like, their cognitive development changes every few months. So how they see the world, how they feel it, it changes for them. And so we got more intense questions, more detailed, a range of emotions. They went from, mommy, I'm sorry you got hurt, to, where's the bad guy, to I wish I'd been there that day because I had to put my police stuff on and got my Nerf gun, and I'd have stood in front of that man and I would have said, don't you shoot my mom. So he had this protective nature, and I'm like, he's 4. And I said, baby, as much as I appreciate that, that man, he wasn't there for that. You know what I mean? And so that bothered me. And so we dealt with a lot of anxiety that I wasn't prepared for from him. Other people telling us that he was getting emotional. He cried to my mom because I was returning back to work the summer after my shooting. He was 5 at that time. And in his mind, in 5-year-old's mind, mommy went to work and got shot one day. Mommy going back to work equals mommy getting shot again. And so he cried to my mom. He was different at school. He's a very engaging kid. He loves being in the thick of things. He loves helping people, but he was sneaking my work shirts to school with him. He was falling asleep at weird places. He just was very detached at school. And as a mom, to have someone else tell you your kid is feeling these things and you didn't understand it or didn't see it, it feels kind of crappy because I live in the house with him. I understand the excuse can be, well, I was going through my own stuff, but that doesn't negate my feelings as a parent or our feelings as a parent, because he wasn't telling Jason either. No. And the thing that got me the most was his teacher saying that he told her that his stomach hurts when he thinks about me. And that pissed me off. Like, I became enraged. I wasn't mad about the shooting at that point, but now I'm mad because I'm his safe place. I grew him in my stomach. That's no longer flat, but I will get over it. I still love him. But this is his safe place where I grew him. And someone else has rocked or damaged this supportive environment that Jason and I have created for him. And we're very careful about who we allow around our kids. And this person isn't even here to take responsibility because they killed themselves. I'm not looking for the suspect to fix our child because that's our responsibility. But now we're stuck having to try to answer questions we don't have the answers to. And he's 8 and we still deal with things from time to time. But we recently we went to a family therapy session just to check in and see where things are, because we had a couple of things happen in our area, like a few blocks from our neighborhood, involving police shootings and stuff, and that triggered something for him, right? Our daughter, she's been good overall. She just knows what she hears. At that time, all she cared about was getting breastfed. She chased me around the house for a week after I got out of the hospital. Boob, 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 boob. And I'm like, chill out. Like, you're worse than your father when it comes to a boob. Like, calm down, girl. So I thought they were competing for a while. But eventually I did nurse her again, and I needed to nurse her. I needed the endorphins and the oxytocin release that you get from nursing. And also I needed to feel normal. I didn't want to feel broken anymore. I needed to feel normal, right? And so, we've gone through all of this with our family, with our friends, with each other, even putting our presentations together. It's like
enlightening is the things we learned about each other, as far as emotionally what we were going through at the time, stuff I didn't know about her and stuff she didn't know about me, and just putting things together and learning each other again. She says I'm not, she's not the same person, right? You want to get back to that person that you were before. You want to get back to normal, but that person's not there anymore. This event happened and it changes you, and getting to know each other and learning how to communicate again was really important.
Yeah, and it's been a struggle, but I also tell people, sometimes we have a plan for life and life changes, and we kind of have to embrace that change, right? And it takes time because we're type A, we're controlling, we don't want to give it up. But we've learned a lot. And one of the things that I've definitely learned is when it comes to help, when it comes to struggling, we have to do better. We as a first responder community have to do better about reaching in. We tell people to reach out all the time, but reach in. When somebody's off, when you haven't heard from somebody, or when somebody's had some tough calls. There's nothing wrong with asking them what's going on, or is there anything that you need, or can we talk? Because sometimes people are just waiting for you to ask that question, right? And you have to be your own best advocate. Only you know what's going to help you and what's not going to help you. 2 things in first responder world that we hate is for things to change and for things to stay the same. But we love to complain about it. If something's not working for you at your department, you have to say something. Because when trauma finds you again, because that's the nature of the business we're in, nothing would have changed. And then our other thing that we love to say is, they don't care about us. Make them care. I wasn't raised to keep my mouth shut. My granddaddy said a closed mouth don't get fed. make them care, because your situation could be a one-off, right? We have all these resources for people out on the street, which is great. But if I were to ask you for resources for yourself or your brother or sister next to you, sometimes it's crickets. Sometimes I think maybe the EAP. No, we need to be able to roll those off the top of our heads, right? And then, be careful what you ask for, because I was complaining about being a working mom, not seeing my husband enough because we worked opposite shifts and having working mom guilt. And then I got shot and I was home for 8 months. Not how I wanted to be home with my family, but I was home with them, alive, breathing. So you may get what you want in life. It may not be in the box that you want it in, and definitely be grateful for every moment that you have, because you don't know how it can change. And this medical retirement has been a transition for me, because I thought I had another 11 years in me to work. And medical retirement for me has been like running at a steady pace on a treadmill. And then somebody sneaks up behind me and pulls that red cord. Physics, I still have momentum, but the ground under me is stopped. So I've spent a lot of time trying to balance my emotions and my reality, and trying to find purpose. And I think I found my purpose, not just in helping people, doing peer support and doing presentations, but also with my family. Also, because this is where I need to be. The job is great. I'm not saying don't love your job, but don't give so much to your job every single day that you don't have enough for yourself, and you don't have enough for the people who are going to be there for you after the job. And so with that, I know we've come to our time. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions, but I just want to say thank you for allowing us to share, because this is therapy for us. This is always a way that we get to kind of give back and talk about our story, and just kind of filter through some things. And I feel like we learn something like every time we do this. And if there's anything you all ever need, I can put our phone number and our contact information in the comments. Please feel free to reach out anytime. Like we really don't mind it, and we really would love it.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
On behalf of everybody, I wish, I know that everybody's probably clapping at their screen right now for you guys. One question did come up here. There are a ton of comments, which I'll let you guys respond to, and you'll read them all. But Meredith, a friend here in Phoenix, US probation, she asked, Jason, I'm curious how it feels for you each time you hear Lindsay's story. Now, I know this is a story that belongs to the family because it's an us or a we thing. But when you hear her talk about it, how does it affect you specifically?
It's pretty wild. We've been doing these presentations for a while now. This is for like 6th, 7th one we've done together. And I've heard the story countless times, just not only working on the presentations, but just, telling people what happened and explaining it every time it hits me, every single time. This is a little different because, we're online, but in person, I often don't have the control that I have over my emotions. I'm not a real emotional guy. I'm not a guy who like cries a lot. It's just not me. But this hits in a different way than anything else. This will always affect me. It will always, hit that spot that you can't always control. I don't think it'll ever stop doing that. That was the day I almost lost my wife. My kids almost lost their mom. So yeah, it gets emotional. It gets hard. But by doing these presentations, by talking about it, it gets me, one, a little more comfortable talking about it, and easier to talk about it with each other. So I think that helps a ton. But yeah, as a husband, that's always going to get you, always.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thank you. And you guys, what I'm gonna do is I'll wrap this up so people can take a break before our next presenter. But I do want you guys to take your time and respond to these comments. I mean, you obviously touched many lives today, and this is not the end of our journey. I know that we'll have more stuff to talk about in the future. But Lindsay, thanks again for sharing your story and in depth.
Thank you.
Stuff. And I think that you are probably America's favorite couple right now. Everybody team Lindsay and Jason.
Don't do that. We're a hot mess. We're a work in progress, but we're moving forward.
Well, thank you guys very much.